Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. I am really excited for today's episode. Before we dive in, want to give a reminder to the listeners. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, check out Mile 40 on Instagram, and follow along for the journey. It just continues to grow and grow, and I want to say thank you to you all. Today's guest is Yosef Herzog. Yosef is a New York native, born and raised in Brooklyn. He's currently the senior stage manager at NBC's Today Show in Rockefeller Center. He loves to travel and see live music in his free time. Yosef began his weight loss journey and his running journey at age 29 when he decided to start living a healthy lifestyle. And from there, he was featured in Men's Health. Yosef has run 6 marathons and 13 half marathons to date. He's currently training for the New York City Marathon this November. Yosef, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I will be out there with you this November. I'm excited. Are you in training mode yet?
Yeah, I just got back from a vacation, so I'm slowly easing myself back into a training program.
Got it.
Yeah, I would say I am officially in training mode.
Awesome. And I see, or I read up that you run with Brooklyn Track Club. Are you still running with them?
Yes, I train and run with Brooklyn Track Club. Additionally, I'm training this marathon cycle with Lululemon's No Name program.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll definitely dive into the running and how we got there, but let's take a quick step back. One of the things that really stands out about your journey, and one of the headlines that I read up prior to this recording was you lost 50 pounds in 5 months. And that's no small feat. So why don't you give us some background on how we even got to the point of needing to lose weight?
So in my college years, I played D3 volleyball, and it didn't keep me in perfect shape, but it definitely kept my exercise levels up. And combined with the younger metabolism, I didn't really have to think twice about staying healthy or staying in shape until I finished school, and exercise wasn't part of my routine anymore. In my 20s, unhealthy habits kind of slowly crept up, and eventually got to a point where I had put on way too much extra weight and had developed some real unhealthy eating habits, combined with the lack of exercise. By the time I was getting up to my late 20s, I just started to feel consistently unhealthy, and I was sluggish and or just in general didn't feel great about myself. So I got to this point where I just felt like I needed to make a change. And although I had kind of been toying with the idea for a while, there was just one day I remember specifically when I was 29 in September, and I was just out of breath tying my shoes. And I just thought, that's it. Today's the day. I joined the gym at work, bought some new workout clothes, and I changed my diet completely. Did a total 180, started exercising regularly. And that was the start. And I've never looked back.
I love it. And I know that before you were on the Today Show, you worked in finance for a little bit. Were you in finance during that period?
I was in finance right out of school. So in the beginning, when I really started to develop unhealthy habits and have long hours at work and would opt for fast food over healthy food, yeah, that's kind of when it all started to go a little bit downhill.
Got it. Aside from the realization around needing to change things from a physical perspective, how are you feeling about yourself, just overall mentally and emotionally during that period?
It definitely added to my motivation to make a change from my mental state. My confidence was low. I didn't love the way I felt or the way I looked. And, it all just kind of culminated into one catalyst that I realized I just needed to make a change to make myself feel better, look better, and just have a generally more positive outlook on life.
Got it. And, you had an athletic background, obviously playing volleyball in college. So you knew what to do when you decided to put the wheels in motion. But still, 50 pounds in 5 months, that's a pretty dramatic decline in a positive way. What was your regimen like during those 5 months?
Yes and no, because I didn't really learn the skills and tools to know what I needed to do from my collegiate athletic background. It was more just the bare minimum of practice and getting to the games and getting through them. But once I started developing a routine to put myself into a more healthy space, I realized I needed a little bit extra help. So I turned to the fitness specialists who were at the fitness center at the gym I started, which was the gym at NBC. And they kind of helped me go on the right track in terms of strength training. And I just started asking different nutritionists and health specialists that were on my show for different tips, and eventually just came around with my own kind of regimen that I developed and that I've been using ever since. And whenever my friends ask, like, what have you done? Like, what can I do to make a change? Honestly, everyone is kind of secretly hoping I'm going to tell them some quick fix or a pill or whatever the new fad diet is. But really, it's all these tools and things that you know already that you need to do, but just don't want to in general. And that's how it worked for me. Like, it was things like eating cleaner and exercising regularly that I knew would work as a whole. I was just reluctant to start because it was such a big hill to start to mount. But once you start doing it and you start doing it consistently, you start to see results eventually, even if it's after 10 weeks, you realize that it works and that you want to keep going and keep doing it.
Was there a part of it that was harder for you, whether it was committing to the gym or changing up your diet? Was there one element that was a little bit that you were maybe a little bit more resistant to, or were you kind of open to both of them?
I was definitely open to both, but in general, at first it was a little difficult to abstain and miss. I missed a lot of the foods that I was used to eating. The exercise was also physically difficult at first, but I took to it. I started to enjoy it and find a way to exercise that I didn't, wake up hating every day. So for me, whether that was a HIIT class or slow jogging in the beginning or just a low level weight regimen, I just found ways to enjoy the exercise I was doing, and paired with the healthy eating habits I had started to develop. It was just a good combination that worked for me.
Was there any sort of, I guess, personal, and this might sound dramatic, awakening once you got into shape now, right? Your confidence is built up. You're feeling good about yourself. Did anything else transpire within your own personal journey after gaining that confidence? Did you see, things changing in your career trajectory, in your relationships? Anything that you can speak to with regards to, once you started taking care of yourself, how did the rest of the cards fall for you?
Well, to me, just kind of felt like it happened naturally because I'd say for a while it took my mind and my personality a while to catch up with my body, with the changes that I had made. And in the beginning, when I started making these changes, it took, like you mentioned, about 5 months total. But the first 10 weeks, I didn't see any change, and I was starting to get down about it. But then eventually, over 10 weeks, I lost 30 pounds, added in a weight regimen, and over another couple months, lost another 30 pounds, and then put on a few pounds of muscle properly with the help of fitness specialists. But yeah, I mean, it really was a very slow build, and it really didn't happen till I remember I took a vacation to Hawaii the April after I started to make these changes, like 8 or 9 months, and I realized that I looked different, I felt different, and it started to make me feel more confident. So there's nothing drastic that I specifically all of a sudden had a moment where I look good and feel good, but over a while, I just started to realize how beneficial just consistent exercise and clean eating can be for you mentally as well as physically. It just has an overall sense of positivity, and just how I approach things from that perspective changed completely.
No, I appreciate that context. And, sometimes people go through these transformations, if you will. And even though on the outside, they're starting to look more refined and they have that build. To your point, sometimes there's that mental aspect catching up to, kind of unify with the new identity, or to kind of understand, who we are. Are we still mentally the person that we were before this journey started? Or do we have more of a growth mindset now around understanding the impact of committing ourselves physically and to the nutrition aspect? And are we going to continue to look for new ways to grow in other arenas of our lives? And so, contextually appreciate that. Now, you had mentioned during that period you were at NBC. So let's take an even further step back and talk about the transition from finance to NBC. What spurred that? And we can go from there.
Well, when I first decided on a major in college, I kind of felt like I was going with the flow with a few of the different majors that the university I attended kind of pushed us towards and geared us towards. And I selected finance. I thought it would be something I'd be interested in. And I graduated and I got a good job and I started working and pretty much immediately realized that it was not something that I would enjoy doing long term. Like, in short, like I really just disliked it and knew that I wanted to make a change, and that if I was going to really just turn my career on its side, it would have to be sooner rather than later, before other responsibilities, personal or financial, just started to develop for me. So I looked into different options, spoke to some people, and I realized that there was this amazing program at NBC that existed called the Page Program, where you basically have the opportunity to be in this pipeline program at NBC. And in addition to giving the studio tours to the public, have the opportunity to work in different assignments around the company at different shows or departments like Saturday Night Live, Jimmy Fallon, the USA Network, Bravo, things like that. So it was, although it was super competitive, I applied and I just took a shot in the dark. And I think the program, after interviewing with them, really appreciated that I was willing to sacrifice an already established career that I just gotten off the ground, and a very decent salary for the sake of following my dream, my passion. And at the time, that meant making $10 an hour giving tours at NBC. But once they accepted me, I just went all in. I quit my job. I started a few weeks later. And after my year in the Page Program, I was fortunate to get a production assistant job at the Today Show. And I've been there ever since, just working hard and enjoying what I do. I work with good people and I have the opportunity to travel, meet interesting people. So, I really only have positive thoughts about it and zero regret about getting my finance career. That's for sure.
That's awesome. And, one of the things that I've noticed about you and just from a social media perspective is you seem to truly enjoy what you do. And very few people can say that about, what it is that they do for a living. And so I love that, you talk about leaving finance and the security of finance to take on a role in this program for $10 an hour. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this episode right now. And these stories are real, people. Like, this is a real story. And definitely a source of inspiration there. For the context of the audience, can you explain what it is you do as a stage manager, and just kind of give them maybe even a little timeline of your trajectory within the organization, so they understand the kinds of roles that you've worked in?
Sure. So to start with, the concept of my job is basically I'm a floor director in the studio while the show is happening live. So I wear a headset and I'm chatting with my director and associate director, who are located in a control room in a different area than the studio. And my director is directing the show. In addition to what's on the studio floor, he directs the graphics and the audio and all the things you see on screen when you watch a show on TV. And I'm essentially his eyes and ears and the director in the studio, directing the anchors to which camera they should be looking at all times, when they start speaking, when they stop speaking, how much time is left in an interview, where to go next, where the cameras go next, or if we have a concert that day or a fashion show. The stage managers are the ones who deal with the choreography of all that, of who goes where, when they go there. It's all timed and precise, since we have to fit everything in very specific blocks of windows. So that's in a nutshell what I'm doing. I'm the one standing next to the camera, giving visual cues while the show is happening. And this is the job I've essentially held for a little over 11 years now. Before that, I was a production assistant, as I mentioned, at the show. And before that, when I was a page, I had the opportunity to work in assignments as the seating director at Saturday Night Live, the seating director at Late Night with Jimmy Fallon when it was a late night show. I worked at CNBC. So I've just really had these really interesting and amazing opportunities that, combined with other experiences I've had, really just enabled me to find this opportunity and this job as a stage manager, and just let it grow and be something that I really enjoy doing and that I've become good at.
How much of your job is preparation versus how much of it is happening in real time?
So I like to describe a lot of what I do in my job versus what a producer on my job does and my show does, as the producers kind of develop the show in terms of what will be on it, the editorial content, and deciding the long-term vision and day-to-day how they want the show to kind of look. And the production team with the director and myself and the rest of my team, we do the how it will go on the air, what it will look like, how it will sound, and all the kind of technical aspects that go into producing and broadcasting a live show on a daily basis.
Got it. Have you, I take it that it's a job that you just have to be on all the time, like especially when it's live, right?
Yeah. So in terms of preparation, the producers are the ones who more prepare the show for the following day or the following week or long-term schedule in the upcoming months. Whereas my job to prepare is usually the day of, or sometimes a little bit the day before, where we come in and rehearse segments that are new or music that is new for that day, the day of, those hours before the show. But once the show goes on the air at 7 a.m., Lorne Michaels likes to say that Saturday Night Live happens not because they're ready, but because it's 11:30 and it's time for the show. So, I think of the same concept when it comes to my show, that at 7 a.m., like the show's happening, whether we're perfectly ready for it or not. So the best we can do is just make sure we're properly prepared. We go on the air. The show is on every day live from 7 to 11. I work on a good chunk of that. And it's on 363 days a year, I would say, as an approximation, since we're on tape for Christmas and New Year's. Wow. We have a different team the weekends, thankfully. So I only work Monday through Friday. But yeah, it's a high stress, high pressure environment where when the show is on, we're on. It's not like the job I had previously, where there were some periods of downtime where I could just sit at my desk and, save my projects for later when I worked in finance. And as long as the work got done, it didn't matter exactly how I managed that schedule. With this job, it's kind of like a service worker. If you're there and the act that needs to happen is happening, like, you need to be there, you need to be on, and you need to be working and making sure everything goes right, not missing a cue, and that everything goes perfectly. And although the public might not notice every little thing if it goes wrong, we do. We're always our own critics, and our own the ones that take it the hardest. So we know when it goes wrong and what happens when it's not supposed to look a certain way. So yeah, it's definitely that kind of environment.
I get it. Wow. Is it fair to say that no 2 days are the same?
Although the show follows a similar structure every day, I'd like to think it's same but different, because there's always slightly different guests and different content, different topics. So yeah, no two shows are exactly the same. There's always different news to report and different ways to report it, and different entertainment or interviews. Those kinds of things are always changing. So it keeps it interesting, keeps it fresh. And to me, it's always something new.
I love it. And I think to the outsider, they may think, he covered this or he covered this person, and that must be really cool. But to you, is there a specific day, event, guest that came on that kind of stands out as an experience that, kind of made you really reflect on just being where you are and kind of feeling fortunate for that opportunity?
Absolutely. I mean, it's always interesting when there's people that I grew up idolizing or following, whether it's a musician or an actor. And then when they come on, it's really fascinating to meet them in person. But in terms of overall experiences, I have to say the most amazing opportunity I have with the show is being able to travel to and work on our show while we attend the Olympics every 2 years. And every time that happens, I definitely sit back and then look out over, the background of wherever we are, whether it's been Sochi or Rio or Pyeongchang, and just think, how lucky am I that I get to travel to these places and work with these people and be at the Olympics. It's something I never would have dreamed of if you had told me in college, like, what do you think you're going to end up doing in a few years? It's never something I would have guessed.
Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal 1 by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with meal 1. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. That's amazing. And really ties in well here, which kind of leads me to my next area of conversation that I want to dig into a little bit is your marathon journey. At what point did you start to kind of delve into the running world post the weight loss journey?
So when I started the weight loss journey, it was purely that. It was to lose some weight and not even to like get in shape in the sense that you think of like someone is a bodybuilder or someone's just trying to look a certain way. For me, I really wanted to feel differently and lose some weight because I knew that it would just make my health improve overall. So to do that, I began with what I thought would be the most efficient way to do it, and that was running. And I couldn't really go far. I couldn't go fast in the beginning, and it was more of a walk run situation. But I promised myself, you're going to run 30 minutes and hit, 3 miles or 30 minutes, whatever came first every day. And I probably should have taken some rest days in the beginning, but I did that 7 days a week for 10 weeks. And that's when the weight started to fall off. And then I started to space it out a bit and add in the weight routine, as I mentioned earlier. But once I lost the weight and I thought, okay, I definitely feel better and I look better than I used to, I kind of developed an affinity for running and I liked it. So I thought, okay, now let's see how much further I can go and how much faster I can do it. And then a friend of mine signed me up for a 10K. And I tried that and I kind of enjoyed the competitive edge about it. And that was about 8 or 9 months after I had started my journey. And then the following March, I had signed up for the New York City half. And that was the first half marathon I did in 2016. And again, I just really kind of got into it. I like the routine of it. I like the process, the structure of the training. It keeps me grounded. And in general, I'd say I really enjoy the process and the training program more than the actual race. And it's just been something that's really become part of my life in a way that it keeps me in a routine. And, routines and structure have always been kind of good for me. So this is one that I've enjoyed discovering. And I hope I'm going to be able to do it for a while.
You bring up routine and structure, and we talked about this before we hopped on, and I read in an article, you get up pretty early in the morning. So you get up at 4:30 in the morning, is Monday through Friday, correct?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
where does the training fall in here? Are you working out in the morning? Or are you working out after work?
A little bit of both. I try to, we have the gym at NBC that I got started at. I'm fortunate to have that convenience. So I try to go and do some weight training after the show every day, about 10 or 11 a.m. And then I go home and take a nap, which is real nice. I've become quite used to that. And that's kind of how I do my sleep structure. I split it up a bit, a few hours in the afternoon and a few hours at night. Yeah. And then I do my running and training in the evenings when I do it. So it's kind of become that kind of schedule and regimen.
And just, to kind of give listeners a little bit of insight into you and your life, where does your social life come in, right? I mean, you are working a job that kind of calls for you to wake up super early in the morning, come back, you're napping. You're also very, focused on your regimen and working out. Do you have, a chance for the occasional dinner midweek, or are you saving a lot of your social life for the weekend?
I do save a lot of it for the weekend, but yeah, I make it work on weeknights if I wanted to. I go to sleep later than one probably would think.
Oh, really?
But because I nap in the afternoon, I end up going to sleep around 11 o'clock at night. So I definitely have time to train and have a social life or plans at night if I do choose to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's where the weekends come in. And I try to make it all work. And it's like anything else when it comes to anything. When it comes to, with time management, if you want to make it work, you will.
Yeah.
And that's the gist of it. So whatever I want to make happen in my life, I try to make time for it.
Got it.
Travel, live music or running, whatever it is. And if I want to do it, I'll find a way.
I love it. Yeah. You caught me off guard there. I thought for sure you went to bed earlier. So that makes sense.
No, at least 11 usually.
Got it. Very cool. So back to when was your first marathon?
First marathon was November 2017, New York City.
Got it. And I remember you had shared with me that was that the one that you fundraised for?
So the first one I had fundraised for was the half marathon in 2016.
Got it.
And I took up the cause of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
Yep.
My mother had been diagnosed with multiple myeloma several years prior. So it was a cause that was near and dear to me. Eventually, I started to participate in New York Roadrunners 9+1 program and gain entry to the marathons that way. But LLS has always still been a cause that when I can, I raise money for or support.
Got it. And outside of New York, have you run any other marathons?
Yeah, I've done Berlin, Chicago, and London. I remember when I started running and I signed up for my first marathon. Um, we did this. I had signed up for group running originally through Nike. They had this program called Project Moonshot.
Okay.
And it was an amazing marathon training program that I got into for 2018. That was the first time I delved into the concept of group running, which was foreign to me. And in this program, at the end of it, they did this really cool local ad campaign with Nike that was on billboards all around New York. And they kind of asked us when we were shooting it, like, what's your moonshot? Like, what's your ultimate goal that you thought was never possible that you want to complete one day? And for me, I remember a couple of things I mentioned was one, when I had started was not being out of breath tying my shoes, and scratch that off the list. And the other one was accomplishing all 6 of the world major marathons. Yeah. So those 6 are New York, Chicago, Boston, London, Berlin, and Tokyo. So at this point, I'm 4 done, 2 to go. So close to it. So it's been pretty interesting to see how that's happened over the years, and that started about 8 or 9 years ago.
I love it. You and I are right on the same track. I'm running Berlin in September. Anything you want to tell me about Berlin?
Oh, amazing. Yeah, you'll have a great time. I mean, stay kind of within a mile of the start and finish line. It's a pretty flat race, just a few turns. I'd recommend going on YouTube and taking like 5 minutes to watch one of those videos where they literally drive through the course so you can just wrap your mind around it. Otherwise, I mean, if you're training in New York for Berlin, then I think you'll be very qualified because it's very flat, and that doesn't make it easy. It just makes it easier than the New York course.
Yeah, no, I hear that. That's what I heard. If you're training in Central Park, you should be okay for the Berlin course. I'm really looking forward to that. And
have a great time.
I appreciate the parallel here because I relate a lot to your story and your journey and the different aspects of it. I remember the times in my life where, for me, my weight loss journey, if you will, started my sophomore year in college, where I kind of had a similar moment where I just kind of perked down, realized like it shouldn't be taking this much energy to do some of the things that I was doing. And then I committed to a summer and then shed the weight. Never looked back. But then it was several years later where, similarly to you, I decided to get into the running circuit. And then ultimately for my first marathon, decided to fundraise for LLS as well. And so I can really appreciate the parallels across your journey. And we've really hit on a lot of the main points. But what I really want to kind of dive into is a little bit more around your mindset as it pertains to obstacles that might come along your way going forward, right? Like, you've talked about how you address the weight loss. You talk about how you faced, the marathon climb head on. And you talked about, honestly, like, such a positive attitude about switching industries, knowing that you were going to take a pretty significant pay cut. Where does that mentality of taking on new challenges head on kind of derive from?
Well, for a good part of my life, especially early on, it was pretty risk free, and I went with the flow and attended the schools that I was told to attend and did the things I was supposed to do. I didn't really come across any kind of turning points or crossroads in my life until I had to make that first decision. So that was definitely the first time where I had to sit down and just have a conversation with myself and think, like, if you want to do what you think will make you happy, you're going to have to take a risk here and tackle that kind of adversity head on and make a decision and just hope it pans out. But I mean, ever since I started running, especially competitively with myself and running marathons, there definitely have been obstacles that come up that get me down. And, I really try to stay positive because negative outlooks don't really get you a whole lot. And the obstacles that come up the most, as any seasoned runner will tell you, is injuries. Injuries happen all the time. And I've had plenty of them, from a stress fracture in my heel, diagnosed 3 days before the Brooklyn Half Marathon a few years ago, to just your standard hamstring strains or IT band syndrome. And then a few years ago, I had some pain in my knee, and we took an MRI, and turns out I had a medial tear in my meniscus that needed surgery. So I had surgery, and this was about 3 weeks before I went to Tokyo with work for the Olympics. Ended up there in a huge leg brace, and then had to go through physical therapy, which again, as any runner will tell you, is not fun and real tedious when you need to recover from an injury like that. But those things come up, and it's just a matter of knowing that if you do want to do something like this long term and be healthy and be able to do something that you really enjoy when it comes to sport and athletics like running, especially as I get older and I realize that time is not on my side here. You got to take care of yourself, and when injuries come up, you deal with them. And yeah, that's really been the biggest obstacle, the injuries that inevitably come up and sideline you from doing something that makes you feel good.
It's interesting you bring that up. And I've talked about this before on the show. And I know you alluded to it earlier too, when you said that when you first started, 7 days a week, you were going at it. And it took you a while probably to realize that you shouldn't be running 7 days a week. And similarly to me, like when I first started, I talk about mile 20 or 23 at my first marathon, and how like I broke down because like I overworked myself. My legs were shot. I was in pain. I definitely injured myself, through all that training. And it wasn't until, marathon 5 or 6 for me where like I realized like you don't need to be running 4, 5, 6 days a week. What you need to be doing is you need to be, balancing it out. You need to emphasize the importance of recovery. And this is all to say, do you have a routine around recovery that you could share, or just any tips around what you do to focus on recovery?
Sure. And again, everyone's different. Some people are going to run 7 days a week, and if that works for them and their body can tolerate it, then all the more to them. But for people like me, I realized that 7 days a week was not healthy, and I try to take at least, even at peak marathon training, I do 1 day a week where I don't run or do any exercise at all. But in general, I try to cross train. I like to spin. I like to do Pilates, and I like to do things, that make me feel good, but work out at the same time. So if my body's telling me like you need a rest day, like I'll take a rest day. I've come to a point where I know that like if I take a day off or I go on vacation and I don't work out regularly for 2 weeks, I'm not going to snap back to the way I was prior to getting in shape, and the weight's not going to come pouring back on. It did take me a while to kind of conceptualize and understand that that's not going to happen, and that's mostly in my head. But at this point, I feel like I've developed a healthy relationship with working out and with food, and I know what I need to do to stay in shape of how I want. And that, if I want to eat something that I don't usually eat, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to hold back, because the more you abstain from something and never let yourself do it, the more likely you're just going to be to binge it when you have the opportunity to, or, like a fad diet. When it's over, you're just going to snap back to the way it was before. So the idea is to develop and create something for yourself that's more of a long-term solution, like a lifestyle change, where you might have a couple ups and downs in the middle of it, but in general, it's just going to be a steady, consistent path for you.
Absolutely. My final question for you is really around sources of inspiration. It seems like a lot of the momentum for your journey came from self-reflection and came from maybe looking yourself in the mirror and deciding to make a change. Are there any outside sources of inspiration, whether it's someone who's impacted you throughout your life, or whether it's a book or something that you kind of lean into with regards to how you carry forward as an athlete and as an individual?
I mean, in general, I had always been inspired by other weight loss stories. And at the time that I decided to start mine, I had a roommate named Matt who had just lost some weight. And he definitely inspired me to get things going after procrastinating for so long. And then as I go along in my journey and my current life and the way I train now, I'm constantly inspired by the teammates I train with all around me in Brooklyn Track Club or any other running partners I have. And, every time I think I don't want to run today, the weather's not great, I'm not feeling great, I see all my friends out there and they're doing it. Everyone's training and everyone's still going. And, that keeps me up. That inspires me for sure. And, it just makes me think that I just want to keep going.
I love it. Yeah, there really is no community like the running community here in New York, and the people. That's one of the things I love about New York City. The fitness scene here is like nowhere else. Where you are going to see people.
Amazing.
Yeah, you're going to see people running on the coldest days of the year.
Yep.
Regardless of the conditions, regardless of what's going out there. There's always going to be someone out there at the park doing their pull-ups and just showing you that it could be done. And so I love that answer. I just
Yeah.
want to
And,
say, yeah, go
on
ahead.
vacation, I'm always the one. My friends who don't run always are the ones that poke fun at me because I'm the one who wakes up early to do that 10 to 15 mile marathon training run on the side of a 2 mile stretch of the Tennessee highway, or I'm at a music festival, waking up early, running around the camping grounds to get my run in. And like sometimes you do feel like the odd man out, but overall, it's the kind of things that I like to do and keep me going.
I love it. And I'm right there with you. I know all about that. It could feel, on the surface a little isolating, but on the
Mhm.
inside, why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
And that propels you forward. So thank you for that context. And thank you for coming on, man. It was really good having you on the show today. I love your story because there are so many elements of it that people could pick up and just kind of drive inspiration from, whether it's around weight loss, whether it's around leaving a job that's not fulfilling to you, and just kind of getting after it, setting that structure, and understanding that a lot of times change can come from just that, reflection in the mirror and just kind of looking at yourself and deciding, it's time for a change. So thank you for coming on to Mile 40 today.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been great chatting with you.
You got it.